Welcome back to our podcast, People Just Like Us. We're really glad that you've been able to join us again. And today I'm joined by Gill. Gill actually does quite a lot with Healing for the Heart. Gill is the person who makes all the website stuff possible for us. So if you've been on our website, then Gill is the person that we have to thank for our website. So Gill and I are going to have a bit of a conversation. We have known each other for quite some time, for longer than we've been doing the Healing for the Heart stuff. And so I thought that it would be really interesting for folks who tune into our podcast to hear a wee bit about who Gill is and what she does and some of the stuff that she has been thinking through in terms of mental health and well-being. So why don't you tell us, Gill, how you came to be doing what you're doing just now, what it is you're doing just now, what that's like. Tell us a wee bit about yourself.
Okay, so my background professionally is in programming, and I worked for many years for Glasgow University doing programming, and during that time I was doing a lot of repetitive work, and a friend of mine from university that I'd kind of lost touch with had just had a baby girl, and within 24 hours of her baby being born, they both had passed away from sepsis, which was really impactful. It really impacted me. It really gave me a little bit of a wake-up call in that what the heck am I doing with my life? So cutting a long story short, I packed up myself, packed up my house, packed in my job, and went and taught skiing and snowboarding in a number of countries around the world. Had a blast, came back to the UK, worked for a number of charities, and eventually said, I think I actually want to be my own boss. I want to run the show here. What can I do? And I realised that what I could do was make websites. So that was when Buttered Toast was born, and started, I think that was 2018.
Yeah.
And I've been working full-time in the business since 2019, just at the end of the year and just before COVID struck. So
Excellent.
yeah, it was quite interesting times.
So Buttered Toast.
Buttered Toast, yes.
So do you want to tell us the story of the name?
So the name comes from my daughter. Originally, so websites wasn't my first idea. Hosting was my first idea, and many of you won't even know or care what that is, even if you do know. But I had spent ages setting up this automated hosting system where people would come on the internet and buy my hosting and they would never talk to me and I would never talk to them, and I would just get their money all the time, and it was going to be amazing. And I spent a long time, long nights and long weekends setting this up, and of course nobody came at all. So that was quite a lesson to me. So the word buttered host is played on the play on hosting. Buttered just came out of the air from Isla. Don't know where it came from. The irony with that is that I am vegan and I don't eat butter. So anyway, we loved the name. It stuck. Lots of people love the name, and I don't see us changing it no matter what we're doing now. So. And
I love the stuff on the bottom of your emails now, I noticed, in terms of the fun facts.
Yes. So I tried this new thing. So this is about how you manage what people, the pressure you feel from people emailing you all the time, because that can be, there's something in me that I want to really do a good job for people, so I want to immediately respond to what they're saying, and I realised that actually it's not very good for my work, and it's not very good for my mental health. So my coach suggested that I put some kind of message on that just says that I pick up my emails at various times. And I noticed somebody else did this. They put some fun facts at the bottom of one of these emails, and it was just the idea that it takes the sting out of it a little bit, I'm not speaking to you, but here, this is funny anyway,
Yeah. I thought it was really good.
Good.
It made my day and it made me smile. So
good.
there we
Well,
go.
I've had nothing but positive feedback from it, and
Excellent.
that I was quite worried about that. So it's been good that it's been positive.
Yep, absolutely. So you moved into owning your own business, effectively working for yourself and really working by yourself quite a lot of the time as well. So I suppose I'm quite interested to hear how you look after yourself in the midst of that, because that must be quite isolating.
Yeah, and that's a really, really piercing question for me, actually, because I think probably the answer to it is that I don't do enough of it. I don't look after myself well enough. I love what I do. I have a lot of fun with it, and I live on my own, and so it's actually really hard to know when to stop. Where are the boundaries in that? And I have some family commitments that when they happen, you know, sometimes there's things that happen and I have to respond immediately. So I try to really go hard at my work with the knowledge that at some point there could be something that I have to react immediately to. So that means that it's really hard to stop and sort of take a step back in case I don't finish something, because I can't necessarily plan as well as I would like to because of that dynamic. Also, I work sitting down most of the time now, despite the fact that I did buy a standing desk, which you press a button and it goes zoop, and then it goes zoop, and it's wonderful. But I hardly ever make it go zoop. It's mostly down. I'm trying to make a conscious effort to stand more. But the other thing is, so exercise, eating well, taking time away from the screen is very, very hard. And I'm trying really hard I've been working on this because of the family stuff. I realised that actually I really need to take care of myself better in order to be prepared to do that. So I've now managed my diary much, much better. I diarise breaks quite, whereas I used to leave a space in my diary and then I would think, oh, that feels nice and spacious. Now I have it does say break in it, so that I do know that is when I'm having a break. And I take my breaks. So this week I have just started diarising my exercising, so that's really good. And so I'm getting there, but it's a slow progress, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I think. Yeah.
I suppose those must be issues though that are kind of common amongst folks who have their own business, because there must be huge pressures when you own and run and work in your own business in terms of getting everything done, because actually that's the thing that's providing your livelihood and all the rest of it as well. So that must be quite common amongst business, sole traders, or people owning their own business, that they're the only person working in it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things about it is that it's even if you're employed, nothing is set in stone. So anything can happen, and particularly in this climate. So nothing is as stable as people used to think it is. So people say that having your own business is a little bit more risky, therefore more pressure. Yes, it can be if you let it. If you think that way. Personally, I have a great belief in what I'm doing, and I actually believe that that no matter what the economic climate, there is work there, and it's just. So I was looking at something this morning, and I was thinking, well, we've reached 8 billion people. There's 8 billion people in the world. I'm only looking for 24. I can do that. That seems achievable to me. The thing that does bring the extra pressures for me, from my perspective, is that one, it's your baby and you absolutely love it and you want it to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's the journey is so fun. You get caught up in the excitement. You can forget to that there's a world outside your business. You can forget that you have friends that don't necessarily want to hear about your KPIs or your whatever numbers or how good you did a call with somebody or how well you got on with somebody. They don't care. They want to talk about like normal things. So that's also quite isolating when you can't really share that with other people. I think if you've got a partnership, that can be, you've got another person to bounce things off. But when you're a sole trader, it is a little bit more isolating, and it's very important that you surround yourself with people who understand and can get what you're on about. So I have a community of other agency owners who are running similar businesses all over the world. And I like, well, you know, Lisa, who obviously I work with her. She's a great designer. Worked with us on the Healing for the Heart website. She is fantastic, and I had a right rant at her last night, and she came back this morning with lots of sympathy and you know, because she understands. She's in the same business. She knows what it's like. So I think it's really important to have that peer-to-peer support. But also to actually force yourself to do something outside of your business for fun, and really take a break. So you're not boring, for starters, so you can talk about something other than work. Yeah.
And of course you're all the snowboarding stuff and all. I see the dome has closed. That's not good.
Oh, that's awful. I had a voucher. I'm glad I used it last month. So yeah,
excellent. Yeah. Put it all in perspective.
just got in there with my voucher. Yeah, I mean that. There are so many. I was thinking about that, how awful it must have been for all the people who work there, but particularly one of the places that I worked for was Disability Snow Sports, and they have an office in there, and they ran out of there. And that will be devastating for a lot of people with disabilities. So but yes, that snow is definitely my passion outside of work. And I'm looking forward to the snow this winter in Scotland.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, here's hoping. And my new summer one is paddleboarding on the water. So that's been great as well. So that's I really, some weeks I joined a club, and some weeks I really had to force myself to walk away from the computer and go to club night. And sometimes I just don't do it. I should be at club night, and I'm sat in front of the computer. And sometimes I could kick myself. I think, what are you doing here? Get out. Because I never ever regret going.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's just the push, it's the momentum sometimes to actually make the choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to go, sometimes that's the hardest battle, is actually just to get out the house and go.
Yeah.
We were chatting in here not that long ago about the gym, and I was saying the same thing. It's like, I know how much better I feel once I've been, but the hardest fight is actually to get, because your mind can convince you of all sorts of things, like, oh, it's too cold, you don't have enough time, you're going to get wet, you don't, oh no, that meeting, you'll never make that meeting, you really have to do, you know, and before you know it, the time's gone and you really don't have time to go. You touched on a minute ago the whole, you know, you find yourself still sitting in front of a screen, and you know, you could have been whatever, and I suppose that makes me think about the whole kind of digital technology thing, which with a lot of people and in a lot of places in the media gets really bad press in terms of our mental health and our emotional health, and the impact of social media, the impact of screens, reducing people's screen time. And so we tend to hear lots of the negative stuff in terms of how the digital world impacts us. But I wonder whether or not there's for you can see ways in which actually the digital world can improve things for us.
Yeah, I think so. That's a really good question, and one of the things that I sometimes feel I'm a little bit out of step with some people with is that people say, well, you need to have more time completely away from any digital device, step away from it, switch them all off at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever time people deem is appropriate for me. But actually, you know, my whole life is electronic, it's digital. That's the way I operate. I have my Google Nest, I have my Kindle, I have my, everything is electronic, and that's the way I live my life. And so for me, it's really important that if these things are going to be a help, that they don't become a hindrance. And I think there is something about how you use them, and what are the resources you're accessing as well. So I mean, one of the things, obviously, it's hard not to mention, is Hope's Table, where we work together to produce the website for Hope's Table, and that's a fantastic resource for people. You know, it's got the visual, it's got the little duck pond, which people can just sit and watch the ducks botty kicking up in the air, and if anybody hasn't been there, you should totally go. I think it's hopestable.co.uk, big plug. But there's also, I was watching, I was doing a little bit of a mini course with somebody online, a lady who does stuff with, I'm going to say the letters wrong, is it EMDR?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so she was getting us to do a session, and this was a group of people all over the world, and she was running a dot backwards and forwards. Now, so she's in, I think she was in Australia or something, and she's running this dot, this session with people all over the world, and all over the world, we are going like this, and we're following the dot, and we're going through the session with her. And I thought, this would not be possible without the technology we have.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, that was really helpful to have that happen right in the middle of my day. I just kind of went through that, did all the resetting stuff, and just felt great about getting into the next level. I think the other thing is, you know, there's practical stuff about blue light. You can put screens and things like that on them. I don't really like them, but some people find them helpful. And do you know what? The other thing is, I don't have a TV, so I don't switch off my electronics at 10 o'clock or whatever. I might watch a movie at that point, and then I'll switch off. So, movies, when you need to relax and unwind and you just want to watch something, I don't see that as an issue. I think it's like everything, though. Everything can tip into an issue, can't it?
That's right.
When it grabs hold of you. I last week removed Facebook from my phone because of reels, basically, because I wasn't even watching them. I was sat doing this, and I didn't even stop. And then I looked up, and 3 hours of my life had gone, and I thought, that's really not helpful. I don't feel good about that. So I took it off completely. Now I can still go, but if I go to it, I go to my desktop computer. So I only go for work really purposes now. So
yeah. And I suppose it is just that, working out what it is that works for you. Mm. And if it works for you, then that's fine. If it doesn't, then that's okay too.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard and fast, well, I have to do this or I have to do that. But it is actually about a very personalised approach in terms of what works. I suppose too, for us, before the pandemic, we didn't do anything at all online. All we only ever did in-person stuff. And it was only the pressure of the pandemic that made us do that in those conditions. Otherwise, I'm not sure we would ever have moved online, because we were really resistant to it. But now, having done that, we can see the benefits. We've had 2 ladies from Shetland who have been part of one of our online groups from the very start of the pandemic and continue to be part of that. And if we only ever run those groups in person, they would never have had the opportunity to do that. The follow-on from that is that Vicky, who runs those groups, has been up to Shetland, because in actual fact she went up to meet the people that she had been working with for the last 2 years online, and so we now have a connection up there that so there seems to me to be real benefits in some of the digital stuff. I know personally I'd far rather see somebody in person over a cup of coffee, but it's each to his own. My kids aren't like that, so I think there's a generational thing in there too. But I think you're right. I think we can get hung up on what's good for us, but actually what's good for you might not be the same as what's good for me.
Yeah.
And it's about how we make space for one another in that, and what that looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think for me, I'd much rather have in general terms, there are certain people that's not true for, but in general terms, I'd much rather have a cup of coffee over Zoom with you. Mainly because it's a big thing for me to go out the house. It's really quite big. So I would rather do that, and also it's more efficient in terms of time. So I, and
and your carbon footprint.
And your carbon footprint, yeah.
If you're taking the car.
Yeah. But nobody wants to hear that you just want to meet them over Zoom because it's more efficient. Because I think that feels quite rude, doesn't it? Sometimes it's like, well, why do you not want to see me in person? Yeah. So I think when people started returning to in-person meetings, I found that a little bit more difficult because people are asking for in person. I say, oh, would you mind if we just do that over Zoom? Yeah. And you just get a, oh yeah, that's fine, but you see that initial, oh, you don't want to come and see me, and that's because what's right for them is not necessarily right for me, and I think we need to just really respect that. The whole thing around working from home, working from the office, I think that's really shown the differences in people, hasn't it? Yeah. Some people love it, some people love working from home, some people just hate it and they want to get back into the office and have those water cooler interactions and nights out or whatever. And some people are really happy to, stumble from their bed to their computer and get on with the day and maybe put their blouse on in front of I'm not saying that I do that, but
that's right. Top dress, jammies on the bottom. That's right. The one. Yeah. I think there's shifts though in terms of the whole digital world and digital working, and I think that we're all having to learn what that looks like, particularly about connecting in with other staff or supporting staff or whatever. Maybe not if you're working on your own necessarily, although there are other people that you would connect in with too. But I think we're all having to work at that. I know what you mean though about the online meeting thing, because in actual fact sometimes if you can have a meeting, if you can do an online coffee with somebody, you can actually do it in the middle of your day between things, whereas you don't have time to do it if you can't, because you can't get to where they are and then get back. So there definitely are benefits.
Definitely. And also, I mentioned Lisa's in South Africa and I work with her quite regularly, and I have 2 business partners who are in England, and we set up a company together before we actually ever met in person. So and we meet once a week, and I work with a chap in the US all the time, and it makes these things possible in the sense, and sometimes you wonder, like, I look around the city centre and I see the shops shutting down, and there are a lot of hard times, but there's a shift, isn't there? There's a shift from the physical to the digital, and it's just the next shift in a sense, there was a time when there was a lot of manufacturing in Scotland, there was a lot of mining in Scotland and shipbuilding and things like that, and then there was a shift, and I think these shifts come, and we don't know where this will go, but this is where we are at the moment. So.
Yep, I think also it's interesting, when you put it in that language of this, there's been a shift, and you kind of liken it to the manufacturing and whatnot, and we lost the shipbuilding and all of that kind of stuff. And I think for folks though, those shifts create a sense of that they're moving into something that's unfamiliar, and sometimes that can be scary for people, and sometimes that can generate lots of feelings of loss because actually they quite like the thing that was there before. And so maybe that's part of the tussle as well in terms of the shift in the digital stuff now too. Also I wonder too sometimes if the digital stuff has marked the pandemic for us, because actually that's when everybody had to get into the digital stuff, so it wasn't necessarily a positive move into digital stuff, or so tied up with all the digital thing are the feelings round about the isolation of the pandemic and whatnot as well. So we've not really had a clean start on it, on the new hybrid working or anything else. So that's maybe a possibility as well.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing about that is the people that have been left behind, the generation. It mostly is a generational thing, but and I think of my own parents who. They can no longer really use online effectively. In fact, they because the phone is no longer a thing. Everybody texts now. They will, get in their car and go and turn up somewhere because they don't know how to communicate digitally, or so they don't understand that world. They feel left behind in it, and so there is that sense that they're not part of the world anymore.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a real shame. And it's not, a lot of older people did get into using technology, but there is definitely a lot that it was just beyond them. And there are younger people as well who for whom that's true as well. And I think that's a real sadness. And how do we, I don't know, the digital world is my world and I love it, but I am aware that there is an exclusion as soon as you get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we have folks on the podcast here, we ask one question of everybody, and we've had some really interesting answers over the last 12 months, so again, no pressure. But if you had magic dust or fairy dust or a magic wand or something that you could wave, that you could change something in our society or culture that would make a huge positive difference to mental and emotional well-being, then what would you change?
So I should have an answer to this, because you did tell me this question was coming, and I thought I was going to think about it and have a great answer, but I don't really have a great answer. I think attitudes, or hearts and minds, are really the most important. I think because there is still, even though there has been a lot of work and we've come a lot of the way along, there is still a lot of negative stuff around admitting you're struggling, admitting you need help. I think particularly for somebody like myself who works mostly alone, where do I go when I'm having a mental blow up or whatever? And I can't say to my clients, I'm very sorry, I'm just feeling too sad to talk to you today. I'm not going to do that. So, but I could say, I've got the cold, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I could say, I've just broke my leg, I can't talk to you. So why is it that it's still a thing? Mental health is still. So I still think there's a lot of stuff to be doing in terms of changing attitudes.
Yeah. And I think, we would certainly agree with you in terms of what we see here. With folks coming, we think that we do quite a good job in terms of creating space where there's no stigma, but actually it's really countercultural, because it's still out there, it's still alive and kicking and still doing really well out there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for the chat.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you've been watching today and you think you would like to join us here at the table, to join us on our podcast and be somebody that's just like us, where we can have that conversation, we can hear what your heart is in the midst of all of this challenging times that we have, and where you can come and just promote a wee bit of what you do and what you think, then we'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us. The details will be wherever this podcast is going, and wherever you see it, the details will be in the blurb there. We'd love to welcome you, and meantime we will check out now, and we'll see you on the next podcast, people just like us.